Hello everyone. Thanks for joining today. I see you have 21 person in the call, which is great. Looks like the summer keep you inside, and you just want to chill a bit. I don't know how many people we have outside London, because we are in London and here it's insanely hot for the last few days. And I think that now it's like plus 30 degrees Celsius. So yeah, that just nobody wants to get to go outside. Yeah, thank you for joining again. And today we will talk about React, and we will talk about just basics, how to start with React, how to start the project, etc. Ooh, we have some people from New Zealand. Oh my goodness, look at us. That's cool. Oh yeah, Dallas, perfect. Canada. Oh my goodness. Look at us. That's insane. Oh, yeah. I'm really happy to see people all around the world. Yeah. So some people from Mars. Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. That probably Elon, right? Under the. Cool. Yeah. So. You know that every week we're running events whole this summer. So yeah, today, this week we have React. Next week we have rescheduled HTML, CSS, like best practices and how to build things. Yeah, on with HTML and CSS. And then we have two events I haven't created yet, but I will do that probably tomorrow. So that will be about game development with JavaScript. So we will have a guest, and he's an expert in game development and like 3D graphic on building in JavaScript. So that should be cool as well. So yeah, as usual, stay tuned in our channel, and yeah, you'll get all the information. So today, first of all, you probably want to ask for the link to presentation. As usual, let me just copy. So yeah, I will send it to you. Yeah, so how you can join, you have basically on our meetup group, you can see all events. So yeah, all upcoming events. So you can easily just find the one you want to join, and yeah, just join. Yeah, so before we start, for those who are new with us, we try, it's not always works, but we try to keep the conversation during the whole workshop. So if you have any questions on any point, feel free to ask. You can actually unmute yourself and ask the question. That will be better, because I know that many people, they just write in the chat. I'm also responding to that, but just in case, it will be much easier for you and me, basically, if you just unmute yourself and ask the question. So I can explain you basically explain the concept or whatever question you have. So yeah, ideally we will have the great conversation during the whole workshop. Yeah, so I think this is it. I hope that you know that we are a community running always different events, and we have the Slack channel for those who is learning programming, who's doing like self-teaching or participate in any bootcamp or whatever. You can join our Slack and ask for help. We have developers there. We have instructors there, so if you will ask for questions, you will get an answer and help. Regarding the invite, so let me just send an invite to our Slack. 1 second. Copy invite. So I know that again, from my experience, I know that people just shy and quite hesitate to ask questions, but I strongly encourage you to do that, because we're like, our community is not Stack Overflow, so there is no stupid questions. We are super open. We understand that you're start learning new things, and we always happy to help you. And yeah, so any question is not a dumb question, because we we're not Stack Overflow, so feel free to ask anything, even if it's like I don't know, not just tech, not just something like how to build or how to do something with React or JavaScript or whatever, but even with your career, you can ask for advice, for some suggestions, etc. So yeah, anything. We aim to be a super friendly community, tech community, so you can just have a big community of good friends, tech friends, that will help you to grow as a developer or get to industry in general. Cool. Okay, so let's actually start. I will switch off my camera just to save my traffic, but I want to emphasize that please interrupt on any stage and ask questions. So I'm happy to answer to them. Cool. So let's start. So we have frameworks, right? You definitely heard that JavaScript has a lot of frameworks, and JavaScript is a language that we like to joke that you get in new framework every like 5 minutes, maybe every minute, but yeah, still have this like a kind of, we are arguing, is it minute or 5? Because yeah, we have so many of them, but still in the ocean of the frameworks, we have like 3 main frameworks, which is React, Vue, and Angular. I bet that you heard about all of them. So today we will talk specifically about React, because I'm like my background. So currently I'm working as a CTO in fintech company, but my background is front-end development, and like I've started with Vue. So the story is like, why React for me? I started with Vue, I was building different pet projects, build a few, and then I've checked the job market and found that I think in London on that time, it was like probably 300 jobs for Vue and like 3,000 or 2,000 for React. So I thought, okay, I'm learning something wrong, and start learning React. So this is how I started with React, and you can check on your cities. That's it. I bet that this is pretty similar situation, that React, you have much more vacancies for React. So that is why React is a good thing to start. Cool. So vanilla JavaScript, if you start building dynamic layouts, and some people from I know that we have some people from our bootcamp here, when you start building dynamic layouts with pure JavaScript, it is pain. It's really painful. So you want to and it is painful for everyone. And that is why we start thinking about some libraries or frameworks. So you probably heard about a library like jQuery. That was a huge thing like 10 years ago, maybe 15. But yeah, nobody use it now unless it's super legacy platform. But yeah, nobody use it. So people start thinking about what is a better way to work with dynamic layouts, because the modern website has a lot of dynamic elements. It's super dynamic, and we got to the point that let's think about something better. So with vanilla JavaScript, it is frustrating to build that kind of dynamic layouts, but still JavaScript is the only language that your browser understands, and you basically all the frameworks you basically need to compile to the pure JavaScript. And when you write in pure just JavaScript, when you actually write in JavaScript and you write in the latest JavaScript, a lot of things might not be supported by some browsers. And when I'm saying some, I mean Internet Explorer. and some different versions they just don't support something. And it's funny enough, when you build in some logic, you found a few solutions, you implemented it, you're super happy, you've tested in a few browsers, and then some product owner or QA comes to you and say, hey, look, it doesn't work for me. I'm testing on IE, I don't know, 10, right? Because many companies supporting still IE 10 or 11, and you're finding that actually this method or this function from JavaScript doesn't work, and you start looking for workarounds, etc. So this is very painful. Especially this is happening with the latest JavaScript features. And with frameworks, you can always write the latest JavaScript. Why is that? Because after you finish your development, you're basically taking your code and compiling that into some older JavaScript. And you'll get pure JavaScript in the end, which your browser will understand. And any browser, basically, because on your setup for compiling, you will say that, oh, please use the ES5, the older version of JavaScript, and that is compatible in all browsers. So yeah, that is why this is the whole thing. That's why once you're using the frameworks, it is compatible in the end of the day. So yeah, community efficiency is all of these benefits is great. And yeah, as I said, you're still writing JavaScript, which is great. And another benefit of React for me, I found that React is like JavaScript style language, framework, sorry. So what it means that if you look on the React, you see a lot of JavaScript. By writing React, you're basically improving your JavaScript skills. And which is great, because in a few years, I guarantee you that we will get the next big thing on the market. And if you have a strong JavaScript skills, you will just jump to the new product, to the new framework easily. So yeah, that is. On the other hand, for example, we have Vue. Sorry, we have Vue. And Vue is, if you look on the Vue, you will see that it is very, very HTML-y style framework. So it more HTML, looks like HTML. So yeah, it's just like for me, I think the advantage of React is that you write more JavaScript, basically. So yeah, still JavaScript fundamentals is important. Some frameworks, and React is one of them, requires the shift of mindset, how the processes works in this framework, because basically it has some own life cycle for rendering and representing data, and you just need to understand how it works and how to work with it. Yeah. So, as I said, Vue, Angular, so a few older, like Backbone, Ember, Meteor, but yeah, just two besides the React. And yeah, so we have many of them, as I said, and let me actually jump to the React. So, first of all, oh yeah, before I start with React, so this video will be recorded and shared, of course. So everything all the videos goes to our YouTube channel. By the way, if you don't have a link to YouTube channel, one more second, please. I will send it to you straight. One second. There's YouTube. One moment, please. Yeah. So this is our channel on YouTube. So yeah, you can find playlist. You have a playlist tab, and you can find basically all our events there. So yeah, feel free to check it after the workshop. Okay, yeah, so the next question was, I think using JavaScript jQuery versus React Angular is likely driving all Ford car team on. Yeah, agree. Driving Tesla, these. Yeah, exactly. So jQuery is, comparing with React is very outdated, very outdated. Yeah, that's true. Cool, yeah. So let's start with React. So we start with dictionary, right? Because this is something that you will hear once you try to ask some questions in the community or anywhere, or just have a conversation with anyone, you will hear these words all the time when you talk about React. So we have components, state, props, and hooks. You also will hear JSX, lifecycle, and component hierarchy. So let's start with components. Components is basically a part of reusable code, like it's mix of logic and HTML or just logic. So it's basically some isolated part of code that can be reused in different places. So when I say it's kind of a function, if you're familiar with just JavaScript, but in the end of the day, it is a function. So it's actually a function because new React is based on functional components, not class components. That is why today component is basically a function that has some extra logic that can be reused around the whole application. Binding so binding is technically binding, but what context are you asking? So basically data binding is if you talk about just JavaScript. Are you talking about this slide or data web? One-way binding. Okay, so not data, but I know what you mean. I will show you that today in examples. What does it mean? Because you have a state and you have some UI elements like input, and in this context you can have one-way binding or two-way binding. And again, I will show you that in a second. What does it mean? Not in a second, but today I will show you actual examples how it works. What is that? Cool. Yeah. So state is basically a variable, but the variable, not just variable, the variable that React is listening for. So if you change that variable, the state, the piece of state, it will update your component and re-render the data. So imagine that you have in your state or in this variable, specific variable, if you change something and you want to render this on a page, let's say you have in your state, you have a name and you are rendering this name. So once you change, by any way, if you change this variable, the value, it will re-render component and show you a new data. And again, I will show you all the examples today and you will understand what I'm talking about. So again, this is actually a very important concept because if you use variables, React not listening for them, and you even if you modify the variable, React will not react on that and will not re-render component, and you will not get the new information on the view in your browser. So that is why you want to use state if you work with some data. Another thing is props. Props is basically just parameters in regular functions, right? So you pass to function, you pass in parameters. To components, you pass in props. And in the end of the day, again, if you say that component is a function and you pass in prop to the component, you basically passing properties, you basically passing the parameters to function, right? I know it's like all confusing, but this is why people paying us, right? We make everything confusing. Nobody can get what we are doing, and that is why salaries is so high. So this is the whole concept. But yeah, so basically you're passing the props to components, right? And And the last one is hooks. So hooks is basically some outsourced logic that kind of you can use, for example, as a caching way to do some logic extra, like delegate some logic or some process elsewhere, and then you will just get a result and you can render that in component. Again, we will just do that all, and like the new React is based on hooks. So I will show you what hooks are and how they works. So JSX is JS and HTML. So basically you can combine with React. You have sub-language, or if you prefer to call it, kind of sub-language, where you're writing combination of JavaScript and HTML. So you can mix them, and we call them JSX. We call it JSX. Lifecycle, again, as I said, so React has own lifecycle. So for example, if you update in state, it listening for that, it knows that something changed, and that it will update the component. And not just component, I will show you again today a few examples, but yeah, it's not just about component, but it will update the content. And again, the same for props. If you change in props, it will update the component, etc. And component hierarchy. So that means that you have a lot of components. You build in the whole tree of components, right? And that means that you will have, basically you need to understand where you want to put your state, where you want to like store your data, how to pass it, etc. And again, we will get today, and we will talk about that today. And I will show you examples. So this is, as an example, if you have a tree of components, I will draw you a tree of components just to explain what's going on today. But if you change, for example, state in a parent component, it will re-render the parent component and all child component, all children, and like to the very, very bottom. And again, I'll show you everything in examples today. Any questions so far? What is your preferred method? Saving a React file as doesn't matter really. So it just automatically recognize. So we use JSX just for readability, but it can be JavaScript. So some code editors, they don't they basically don't recognize JSX code or throw you kind of an error. So that will work. But the code editor will show you that, oh, I don't recognize the JSX inside the JS file. But it's more for readability for developers that, okay, this is JSX file because this is React component, and this is JS file because this is just JavaScript, some helper or utility or whatever. So yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's go to actually examples. 1 second, I'll bring my project here. So I just created a new project, nothing else. So I just want to show you that to start with React, we will record all videos, the video, and upload to our YouTube channel. Okay. So to start with React, you can have quite a few methods, but the most popular is create React app package. So it basically allows you with one command, and it's recommended by React. So with one command, you're creating already the whole setup for React application. You don't need to do anything because you can go with manual route. And you can just create your webpack. You can basically build everything on your own, which nobody does because it's just too complicated and nobody needs it. And you just use create React app, the simplest way. And many, like I think that the majority of new projects, they are based on create React app. This is like a default setup. So I did that. So npx create React app. and then the folder name. It can be anything. It's up to you. So yeah, so this is what I did here. And if to start the project, all I need to do is just npm start here. I probably, let me check, it might throw me an error, or maybe not. No, it's actually installed all packages. Perfect. So yeah, let's wait. Let me actually close a few windows, because all my projects, they just kill in my machine. Even if I have 32 gigs, it's still just killing my machine. Okay, so close. Probably close the whole thing. Sorry, 1 second. Close this one. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, so you can see that we are running our project on this URL, right? And you can see it's actually automatically started. So I open my inspect. Just, this is like, I don't know. I get used to the create inspect straight away. Open inspect straight away. DevTools. So, and this is default template, right? Yeah, so this is the index file. Where is the index file? So everything starts, the whole project starts from index file. And in the index file, we are saying that you want to render the application, the app component. This is component, right? Again, this is just a default setup. You can call it whatever you want, but this is default setup app component. And you want to insert it into get element by ID root, right? So you're looking on your HTML element root with class, with ID root, and you inject in the whole application. And if you go to public folder, again, everything comes from the default setup. You have all your HTML is just one div with ID root, right? So you're injecting it there. The whole application will go there. So if you, again, we go to our index, you have your app component, right? So let's open the app component. And in the app component, you have just basically HTML-ish, right? So this is JSX. This is what we call JSX, because you have HTML and you have some variables JavaScript from JavaScript, right? So you can see the logo and edit. This is what we have here, right? Edit, source, etc. So let's actually remove everything from here. We don't need it. And let's call it, I don't know, just hello friend. So save it. And you have just a title, hello friend, right? As easy as it can be. Nothing else. So here by default, it's creating like an old ES5 format of function. I don't like it. I always change it to ES6 function. So, but yeah, it doesn't change anything. It just the way you're doing that. And here I'm just removing. We also don't use any CSS from, so that's fine. We can actually, you might see on many projects that they have import React from React, but with the new React, you don't need to import it. You don't use it. So React recognizes it automatically. So yeah, you don't need to import it. This is it pretty much, right? So you have your component. And the default structure, yeah, so we just removed some styles and that just changed styles. So for example, for components, let's start with some basic application like a counter, right? And here I will explain you some concepts. Basically all three concepts with state and props and the component itself. So I want to create a counter. I will start with my some default values, 0, and I want to have like two buttons. Button increment and button decrement. right? So yeah, we have two buttons. I'm saving, and if you go, let me close this one. If you go, we have two buttons which does nothing, and we have our number. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, no problem. Yeah, so if somebody is doing npmx, let me actually send it to you. npmx create React app. For those who want to do the setup now, your project name, you can actually just execute this command, and yeah, you can do the setup on your machine straight away. But again, you can review, watch our video after, so you'll not be in rush and just focus on the content we are giving you now. And if you have any question, if you get any questions, you can ask in the Slack channel. Again, we are there always, so we will be happy to support, to help you. Okay. I know that in some laptops, it takes quite a few minutes, because yeah, I'm using the 16-inch Mac with 32 gigs of RAM, and that takes like, I don't know, 30 seconds. So yeah, it might take time. Okay, perfect. Cool. So yeah, we have just two buttons and some text. So let's start from the state concept, right? Imagine that let's try to think about in a frame of just JavaScript. I have some let counter, right, equals 0. Just pure JavaScript. Again, I do not be confused. I'm trying to think as JavaScript developer, not as a React developer. I will show you what is the difference and explain you what is the difference with state and why you want to use state, not just regular variable. So you have just regular variable, right? And here you have your button, and this is like JSX, right? So here you write on click to listen clicks on your button, and you want to say like click like increment click handler, something like that. We need to create this function, right? So I will create this function here. Here, and I want to modify, so every time I click, I want to do counter plus equal 1, right? Like a pure JavaScript. Same for this one. On what extensions? What do you, oh, extensions. You mean like these guys? So a few things. So I have basically this one is just to help to-dos, because I'm working on big projects, and that helps me to look for to-dos on the whole project. So if I click. So if I, for example, do to-do, it will highlight me, right? Some to-do. This code, and if I go here, it will show me that I have some to-dos in the app. So that just helps me to navigate through to-dos around the platform, which is just helpful. Because currently we are doing the new setup for the new platform, and yeah, it's just new project. Also, I just use live share, so I can do pair programming with other people, with our students, for example, and just code together. And this is it pretty much. So regarding others, I have some formatters, and yeah, nothing crazy. Some oh yeah, I have some snippets React, because I'm working with React. I have some snippets. I will show you how to use these snippets. You can actually use it as well. That helps you to create your components faster. But yeah, let's go back to our code. So here I want to have decrement click handler, right? So that will be counter minus and I have my decrement. This is it, right? And here I want to render. So every time you use the variable inside your HTML, so in the the JSX syntax, you need to put in curlies. So it's not just put in variable because it will trick. So if I forget about my curlies and put counter, we will see counter, just a word, right? But if I put it into brackets, into curlies, I have 0, right? It takes as a value, as a variable. It treats as a variable. So yeah, now if I start clicking, let me actually put some console logs. And click, increment. Here I will have decrement, right? So we will see actually that we are actually clicking on elements. So if I click, you have increment and you have decrement, but number is not changing, right? And this is because React doesn't know that you're modifying this variable. That is why you don't see it. And this is the whole point of the state, because if you put this variable as a state, React will understand, okay, that's been changed. So to do this with new React, starting from React 16, so it's not actually new now, it's like 2 years, 2.5 on the market, but you use hooks, and you have the first hook is use state. So from, and you have React. So you're importing from React, right? And now you're just doing use state, just use snippet and counter. So you have two things. Initial value is 0. So you use your use state and set in the default value. It can be anything. It can be a string, number, object, array, anything. So the first value, you destructure in it, because this one return you an array with 2 elements. First element will be the actual value of the state, and the second value is the function to update the state. So now I can't do this because this one will not work. You want to do set counter and counter +1. So you're taking the old counter and do +1, right? So this is how you're doing this. And here you're doing set counter -1. So now we've introduced the state for our component. Font size, yes, sure, sorry. Is it better? Is it better, Kevin? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Okay, so because we're introduced the state again, now every time I click on the button, I will trigger set counter function. It will let React know that I'm changing the state, and that will take this variable, modify it, because we're doing that here, and re-render the component. I will put the console here and just do re-render app, yeah, or app component, something like that. So you can see that the whole app component is a function, as I said before. It has own functions inside, it has return. So return, actually React requires you to return something. It should be null or any JSX code. So yeah, cool. So let's go to the browser. So you can see that we have re-render, let me refresh. We have re-render app component, right? Initial render has happened. So now if I click increment, you can see that we've clicked, and now you re-render component again. And that's because of that re-render, you see the new value of the variable. So every time you click, you re-render component. right? And because of that, you see the new value. So this is how state is working, right? So yeah, the next, any questions with the state, sorry? No? Yes? Maybe? No. Okay. So another thing, I will just show you that I can create a, I want to show you the props. Does a re-render mean the app is not the whole app, but not the whole application, because that is very inefficient. And this is actually the issue that you can create, because it will re-render this component and the whole tree downwards. So imagine if you go to draw.io, let me see, do I have my old, yes, perfect. I have my old structure. So imagine that this is your, each circle is a component, right? So if you have a state here in this component, and you change this state, it will refresh the whole application. Everything will be re-rendered. That is why it's important to know on which component you want to keep the state, right? So you have two challenges. First is that, okay, I want to keep this data here and state for this data here, because I want to re-render every time I modify it, I want to re-render these components, right? Just this part. Or maybe I want to keep this data here because I want to re-render just these components. Or maybe I want to keep this data here because I don't use it anywhere else. I want to re-render just this component every time I'm changing this data. Does it make sense? So the problem is that if you put all your state into the main component, it will re-render all your whole application. And every time you define in state, you need to think, okay, you need to define the state on the lowest level, the lowest shared level that you need to have this data. So if you need to have some data in this component, and for example, this component, right? So sorry, let me just remove this. This component and this component, the closest shared component is this one, right? If you want to have here and here, the closest shared is this one. Yeah, sure. Sorry, my bad. Sorry, 1 second. My microphone for some reason won't work. I know why it doesn't work. So speaker is, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to add that that is where the React actually comes up with a radical approach compared to Angular or other frameworks, wherein you don't refresh the whole application.
Mm-hmm.
Only that component, its children component. Then what happens is it's very efficient. Let's say you have 1,000 records in a table, or in this case, let's say 1,000 DOM elements. If only one DOM element gets updated, you don't want to update the all 1,000 DOM elements, rather only that element. It's called virtual DOM concept, right? You can probably explain more. So that's where you only update the only one element that's got changed. So that's how the React is higher performance compared to other frameworks, Angular or Vue. That is what I.
Yeah, exactly. So you actually can specify and basically this is like, it's a challenge, but if you're doing that in the right way, the state management, it can be super efficient for you, because you can actually localize the state for the correct component and just update the specific part of the application. Just a tiny piece. So yeah, this is pretty much the structure. So if we go back to our our component, let's say I want to create a component that I can reuse everywhere, right? Because here I'm repeating myself with this component and I'm doing on click twice. So I want to create a button component that I can reuse everywhere. So the typical structure, like for source folder, is that you will have something like components folder, and there you will probably create another folder. I'll explain why in a second, and you will call it like button. So in this button folder, you will create a few files. First, again, this is like very opinionated saying, but I'll explain you why I use in this way. Keep the questions from the time. Yeah, okay, yep. So this is my way of doing this, and you can use in like build in other ways, but yeah, what I'm doing normally is I'm creating index TS. Sorry, TS, it's not TypeScript, JS. I'm using TypeScript, that is why I'm doing, and I'm creating also button JS. I'm also, because of TypeScript, I'm creating like types JS and maybe CSS if I want to style this button here. And basically you have a component with all the files related to this specific component in one folder. So why I'm doing button and index, not just one button or just index. So the story is that, let me create just a component. Oh yeah, by the way, this is a snippet. If I do RAFC, which is React Functional Arrow Component, sorry, C, RAFC, it create me an arrow function, right? And let me copy that from here and paste it here. So I have just a button here. So this is my component. So if I want to import and reuse it, so first of all, it's not very reusable, right? Because I hard-coded some function. So I want, like here, basically to make this reusable, I want to make this dynamic, right? To pass different functions to it, and this dynamic, which is a text. So what I will do, I will pass props, right? And here I will say props, and I will pass, so let's say I will pass props for a second. So first of all, I want to import this component. And here, import this component will be button. And I can do that by from components. Oh, I didn't set up, but yeah, that's fine. Components and button, and then button, right? So I'm importing this button component, and I will put it that to use it, you just write as a regular, let's say, HTML tag, right? So this is your component. And this is a bad practice because you need to repeat yourself twice, right? Button, button. It would be nice just to use button, and that is possible because of the index.js. So index.js, if you do just export everything from button, right? Now, React, if you put just folder name, React will look by default for index file and will export everything from that index file. That is why you're doing this, basically you're exporting everything from the component. This is all you need to have in index file. Why you want to keep it? Why don't just put the button component, everything from here to index? The problem will be if you have a big project, it's very hard to look for files. So if you look for the file and start, you will have a lot of index files without naming. But if you keep the component file, you can actually search by it and find the actual component. It will be much easier to navigate. Again, this is very opinionated saying, but for like you can use in any way. But for me, I found that this is super helpful to keep index, just to have a short namespaces, like just a shorter path to the element, and keep the file, the component file, separately, so you can easily find it in a code base. So yeah, it's just me. You can use it in any other way. Cool. So we have a button, right? We don't pass anything, but we want to pass anything to it. You can say, for example, click handler. So that will be a name of the property you're passing, right? And here, for example, for the first one, you're passing increment, right? And for example, text, for the button text, you want to say that will be string increment, right? So now I want to have the same, but I want to pass decrement, and I will have decrement here, right? So I have a reusable component. Make sense? So that means that when I'm passing these two keys, I want to receive it. So I'm just having props. So here it will be click, what was that? Sorry, short memory. Click handler, right? And the other one will be props dot text. Yeah? So now we have two actually variables. So let's see what we have here. Refresh. Looks like we still have increment and decrement, right? And once you click, it's increment, and you decrementing. So now you're using one dynamic component for the reusable component for multiple purposes, right? So you're passing click handler. So just a naming convention, I'm just calling this click handler because to show you that it can be anything, it can be kitten, right? So this is just a variable name that you are kind of receive here. So here you can have kitten, right? On click kitten. And that will work in the same way. Yeah, it's just like in a regular function, if you have a function test, and you're basically doing this, right? Name, age. This is pretty much the same. This is your props. Here is parameters, and you can use them now, name and age. Same with props. Whatever you pass on this side with a name, the same you can use inside, and you basically referring to it, to the actual thing. So the naming convention saying that once you passing as a prop, it should be on if it's handler, click, and if it's inside the component, it should be handler. But it might look confusing because default method from JavaScript, from React is on click. So yeah. So we have on click, we have text, and here we have on click, yeah, and text. The only thing that you're repeating yourself like props and props, which is not very nice. So it's just regular JavaScript, because props is an object. You can see that it's dot something. So props is an object. I will destructure my object straight away and do on click and text. Again, this is just JavaScript. So I don't need to repeat myself here with props and make my code slightly cleaner, right? Anyway, saying like what is a benefit on this stage? You still need to repeat yourself here twice, right? And the thing is that normally you don't have that kind of buttons. You probably will create something like, let me show it to you. So we will create some, let's say, button CSS. Let me actually do module CSS. right? And you will write some stylings, btn, and that will be, I don't know, border none, background color, some kind of blue. Let me just select some nice blue, change that to different system. Come on, sorry, why it's lagging? Yeah, well, for some reason it doesn't show me the system. Okay, well, and color, that will be white. And yeah, I think this is it. So if you have these stylings, right, you style your button once, so import styles from button module CSS. So now you can just use these styles here and just add class name, not class, but class name. And here you will put your styles dot, I think it's btn, right? btn, if I remember that correct. Yeah, btn. So if I save, I have two buttons, right? Maybe I want to add some padding, let's say 1em, 3em, and border radius, let's say, I don't know, 4 pixels. Save it. Looks better. Maybe too big. Maybe 0.5. I'm obsessed with CSS, so sorry for that. Yeah, better. Yeah, okay. And I think here now you can maybe just wrap it into some, so to have some margins, you can wrap it into containers and add some margins, but yeah, it's the whole different story. The whole point is that you can actually create some stylings and you can actually define the system. For example, you can have a big button, small button, etc., right? And then you can just tweak this, add different classes, and you will get a different button, but from one component. So this is the whole benefit, to pass props to it. But as I said, I want to show you the problem with the state, to have the state here. So 1 second, we have a few questions. I just thought I would be respecting sorry. My friend, of course. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, sorry guys. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to respond to everyone.
I don't know. I'll be leaving shortly. Sorry, taking your time. I like to ask questions because that makes me actually like learning, right? Otherwise, I have a plural site, YouTube, Khan Academy,
Yeah,
you name it. I
yeah,
have 10 sources, right? Why
yeah,
not coming to it? I can ask your knowledge,
yeah.
pick your brain, so that I don't know. I mean,
Exactly. This is exactly the reason I'm encouraging everyone to ask questions during the session, because you can find videos online.
yeah, plural
But
site, Khan Academy. I have 10 resources,
yeah,
including you name it. I have the best authors, paid, unpaid.
yeah,
I mean, I
exactly.
don't know. Sorry, I don't know.
No, no, no. So feel free to ask any questions. I'm totally in that.
And of course, I didn't also, I'm sorry if I joined, but I didn't also say you cannot ask questions. If you thought like that, I'm
Okay,
so
let
sorry.
me say
I
one thing. If
didn't
this is
mean
the
that.
attitude you're taking, right, to the company also, if you
Uh,
never once ask question, if this is the attitude you
can
take,
I talk? I respectfully just thought it would be better if he finished what he's saying, because like that, for example, I'm paying attention to understand, because I'm not as good as you. I'm very new for the app. So when he's talking, I'm paying so much attention, and when it breaks my brain train of thought also. That's the only thing I ask. Of course, I didn't say don't ask anything. I just thought it would be better if you finish something so we can understand. And then he says, okay, now anybody has any question, then we can ask question. I didn't say you cannot ask. It was nothing like that. Of course you can ask if you want. I just gave you my idea, and there is nothing else. And
Why are
okay,
you
that's
wasting
all.
Travis time? I don't know.
That's
We are
why even
fighting. We
I
are
am here.
fighting. I'm sorry. We are fighting and wasting Travis time.
Let's
So
just make a bottom line that please ask questions. No limits. And yeah, so we can continue actually. Okay? Sorry guys. Let's continue. Please ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions. Okay, let's continue. So we have our reusable component, and here I just want to show you this problem with the state that is re-rendering the whole tree. So if I create, I just go to my button, right, and just do console log and re-render button component. Yeah, re-render button component. Refresh, and every time, so you can see that I have two re-renders because I have two buttons, right? So each button re-rendered. Every time I click, it re-renders the app and two button components. And that is happening because of that, right? Because of this logic. So if I'm updating the state in my component, all children components will be updated as well. That is why let's create another component. Let's say we will create another component, for example, counter. So we will create a counter component, and I will create index.js as usual, and I will create the counter JS X. Actually, yeah, let's actually, so you, as I said, you can use JSX. That was a question on the beginning. My answer was to, oh yeah, actually I can see that, fair enough. So my component, for some reason, I have a slightly different setup. So you can configure that, but here, it's looking for JavaScript. So if you don't put JavaScript, you need to specify that this is JSX. Yeah. So, but again, it's up to this. It's up to your setup. Will it handle automatically or no? So for me, I didn't have any extra setup. That is why we need to basically just to specify it here. So let's go to the counter. Again, here, export everything from counter JSX. And now I will just delegate all of that to the counter, right? So RAFC, oh, sorry. Do we need sign every time we export? I will explain you in a sec. RAFC. Come on, where's my autocomplete? Yeah, sorry. So somebody is, sorry, my bad. Cool. Yeah. So now I'm pasting the logic here, right? So I don't have these two things here anymore. I'm pasting it to my counter. I'm moving everything to the counter component, right? And here I want to export, so I don't use this one anymore. These two actually, I'm using it here. So now looks fine. Here I just want to import counter from counter, sorry, component and counter. And now I can use it here. Just this component. Button. What's going on? What's going on? Oh yeah, components button. Module not found. Can resolve components button. That's interesting. that should be resolved. What's going on? It doesn't like my JSX, that's for sure. So actually the React is great because it's throwing you errors straight away. So yeah, let me actually just get rid of, because you need to do an extra setup for that. So I'll keep JS just to simplify our life. Save here. We have this, we have we don't need to have this, and in the button index we also don't have this. So save. Okay, counter JS. What's going on? So we have can't resolve, but sorry, my bad. So we need to go one level up, right? Is it true? So one level up, and button. So why I have this problem? Because in my real project, I have a setup that everything starts from the root. That is why I'm always writing like from the source. The root is components, and then that is why the route was wrong. But you need to build a relative route, right? So we are in components in counter. So to get to the button, I need to go one level up, so two dots, and then go to the index, right? To the button file, button folder, sorry. So now, let me just put console log here as well, console log, and re-render counter component, right? So now, here we have re-render app component. In counter we have re-render counter component. In the button we have re-render button component. So if I go to my application, refresh, we have re-render app, counter, and button, right? First, for the first render we have like one time app and counter and two times button because we have two buttons. So now if I click on increment, you can see that I'm not re-rendering app component anymore, right? Because this is inside because the state is inside counter, so we re-rendering just counter and two buttons again, right? So this is how the tree works. And if I, for example, have another component, let's create another counter, right? So I can have two counters on the page. We have two counters. So if I click counter, increment, you have re-render counter just as you're doing that with regular counter, and you don't re-render this one, right? And click this, it's not happening twice, but just once. So we can actually specify, let's say, some prop order or number, just to show you, just to actually highlight that this is different counters. So we're passing number. So here I want to receive my prop, which will be a number, and I will add the number in the end. Yeah. So now if I refresh, you can see that we have re-render app, render counter 1, two buttons, counter 2, and two buttons. So if I click on 1, you re-render the first one, right? 1 and 2 buttons. 1 and 2 buttons. If I click on the second one, you re-render second and 2 buttons. And this is because of this, right? Of this logic. So you need to pay attention to where you want to have the state and where do you need it. It's not just randomly put onto the top level. So this is the first gotcha for like the problem that you might have with all this hierarchy. Another one, imagine that you have a huge tree and you have the data, you have a click, I don't know, button here, that will modify data that needs to be used here, right? So the closest common component for these two is actually the main one. But the problem, besides that you need to keep the state here, it's also the problem because you need to pass props like a callback basically here to here to here to here, and then pass the data back and to the main one, and then pass to this one and then to this one. And trust me, when the application is growing, it becomes a nightmare to manage. So we have two things. First, you can it's a smart like architecture. But second, which is just a regular solution, we don't talk about this today, but it's a regular solution that people start using Redux, which is global state management. So you don't keep, if you need something, for example, here, some data here and here, you put it into the global state. Or in my example, you need to have data here and here, right? So you just send in data directly, you keep in data in state, not in local state in the component, but in the global state. So you just directly send in data to the global state and getting that from here and just communicating directly through global state without re-rendering the whole application. But again, this is completely different topic. If you want to know more, just check Redux, because this is the main state management framework, let's say, or library for React, and not just React. It's for multiple frameworks. So yeah, any questions on this one, on props or state? I know everyone now is afraid. Feel free to ask questions, please. No? Can you just re-render counter and not the buttons? No. So theoretically, yes. So theoretically, yes, but that means that you want to remove these two buttons from here. Actually, no. Actually, no, because you want to communicate. You can move these buttons, for example, to application, right? So you just moving these to app, for example, but that means that when you change, you want to keep then the state of this in the app, and then you need to pass to the counter. So not actually. You still, yeah, you still that might be a problem. So yeah, not really. In this case, not really. You can't basically. So it just does this re-rendering with the whole tree down. Yeah. Any other questions? Come on, guys. I know. I'm sure that all of you are nice people. Come on. Stay chill. I think that it doesn't matter. It's like a separate Redux is just a separate library, and I think that Redux. I know that's like a re-prefix, right? Kind of convincing you that Redux and React is like a almost one thing, but it's not. But I know that feeling. So I think that Angular, because of the different kind of approach of how they rendering the components and how they like of the lifecycle thing, I think that they might have some other libraries that might suit them better, but you still can use Redux for Angular as well.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Aside from Express, what kind of backend framework do you recommend using with React?
So for the backend, if you kind of want to follow the trend with Node.js, I strongly suggest you to use Nest. I will actually type, because we have Next, we have Nests, etc. So Nest.js. this is a huge, this is like a very similar to how big Laravel is to PHP. So you have everything, you have the whole structure from the box, and this is actually a first big thing for Node.js. So yeah, if you want to learn backend with Node, I strongly recommend you to look on Nest.js. But yeah, but for React, it doesn't matter what backend you use. It still communicates with API. It doesn't matter. It can be Python, .NET, anything. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so yeah. Okay. So we had a question about what is binding and what is two-way binding. So let me actually show you. So let's create some I don't know, user name, maybe user. Just let's create user component. So we need to create this user component. Let me just get rid of my re-renders. We've discussed that. We don't need this one here. We don't need this one. We don't need this one. And close this, close that. Perfect. So for the user, I want to create a user component, and I will show you user index.js, user JS, and import. Oh, sorry, this is user, so that we RFFC. Perfect. We have user. Let's put user here just for a second. And here regarding asterisk. So I had a question regarding asterisk. So it's not about because I'm doing export asterisk from user. That means that I want to export everything from the user. Here I have just one thing, but I potentially can have something export, I don't know, random variable, or an almost spellings, come on, variable const 5, right? So that means that my index will export both user component and this variable random, right? That is why I'm putting asterisk. You can also, if you don't want to use asterisk, you can also use just this, basically user. That will work for us because we have just one thing in the component, right? So this is the same. But yeah, asterisk is just select all. It's everywhere. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, MySQL is asterisk is to select everything. That's everywhere. Okay. So here we have user. Let's actually introduce import. We need to have useState. Import useState from React. And here I will have useState. Let's say name, right? Set name. And on the beginning, that will be empty string. So here I will have h1 with my name. Yeah. And I will have an input, which is text, for example, regular input, right? And I want to listen for changes. So once I'm typing, I'm re-rendering this, I'm changing the name, right? So I will do on change, right? Because this is input, so on change. All these events on click, on change, they are coming from JavaScript. Because in JavaScript you have add event listener click, add event listener change, add event listener something submit. Here it's like on submit, on change, on click, etc. But all of them are from JavaScript. So, and like change input, let's say input change handler. Cool. Yeah, and now that means that I need to create this one, right? Input change handler, and here we will have our set. So here, because you know when you're changing input, you will get an event, right? Just JavaScript. So you get in your event, and here const value is event dot target dot value, just pure JavaScript, and then you just doing your set name to value, right? And let me just console log. So basically, you here one-way binding is when you collecting data from the input and does something with it. It's not affecting your input value. See that normally you have input has a value, right? But if you just, this is one way because it comes from input to state, and this is it. So one-way binding is basically when you just updating data in one direction. In our case, it's from input to the state. So if you refresh, oh, is not defined. User is not defined. Where is that? Sorry, my bad. App 7. Ah, right. I forgot to import it. Import user from components and user, right? Perfect. So yeah, let's actually have something like, so we can see like name, something like that. So name is empty, right? Once I'm start typing, right, you can see that I'm modifying my layout, basically the value, right? So this is one-way binding because I'm taking the data that is changing in my input and updating state. Yeah. What is two-ways binding? That might be actually a tricky concept to understand on the first time, but yeah, I'll try my best. So what is two-ways binding? You know that the value of the input can be set, right? So imagine that you want to pre-populate the form. Imagine that you're fetching data, you have like an edit profile page. And here you want to use this name by default, right? So that you take the value that you've got, let's say not just empty string, but we want to have Alex, yeah? So if I refresh the page, it's already Alex here, yeah? If you remove on change, it will not modify, you can actually type, right? Because you've set the value of the input, and once I'm typing, it doesn't change anything because it says that, and actually you're getting an error, a warning from the React. You provided a value prop to a form field without onChange handler. It will render read-only field, right? So you can actually modify it. So if you put it back, two-ways binding means that when you hit, like when you press a character and a button, a key on your keyboard, it will take the value. So this is important. This is the whole life cycle. It take the value, set the value for in the state, take the new value from your state and set it as a value in your input. So it's not like HTML where you just type in and input lives in your own life. But it means that you changing with the onChange, you modify, you take some new value of the input, setting this new value to the state, take the new value of the state and put it back to the input, right? So now, if I start typing, I can actually modify the state, right? but I also have a predefined value from the state because I have Alex here. I can remove it and I don't have anything, right? So again, this is a tricky part, I understand that, but this is two-ways binding. And you might think like, so which one should I use? And it depends. If you have a form that you don't care, for example, you have a pop-up with a form, right? So you don't really need to listen for all input fields and re-rendering components all the time once somebody typing. So you can maybe just have a regular inputs, and once people just type, they will and you will listen on submit form. So you don't listen actually inputs, you just listen submit form, and that you will take the data from the form and send to the backend, for example. Or maybe you on the other case, you might have this pre-populated like edit form, right? And where you fetching data of the current user's data, fulfill the whole form, and then user modifying and updating it. So that might be the case when you want to use two-ways binding. So again, it depends basically on you and your needs, which one you want to use. So let me show it to you just with input. So imagine that we have a form, right? So if we have a form, we have a button, submit, and here we don't listen, for example, on, so we can listen on change, right? And on submit, we have on submit we will do form submit handler, and we will create something like const. So here it's important, event, come on, event, and here we have, as usual in JavaScript, remember that when you submit the form it will re-render the page because this is default behavior. So what you need to do is just event.prevent default, right? So you stop the re-rendering, the default behavior, and then, for example, you want to, I don't know, send name to backend, right? Yeah, so this approach is completely valid. So you just taking this, every time you change something in the input, it will re-render component, and once you submit the form, it will take the value from your name from state and send it to the backend. Or to be more efficient, so you will not re-render and make more like pure JavaScript style of doing that. What you can do, you can remove your own change, right? So you don't listen for change. You get rid of values here, and you can actually take const. You can find the element. You can get the element of your input, right? The value from the input. So you can like input value, and here you can have event dot target dot query selector, and you will look for, in our case, for input because we have just one, and then you want to do so this is input, and const input value is input dot value, right? And then you can just hit submit, right, and send the input value. So that can be another way. So that means that when you're typing, you don't re-render your components all the time. You just, once you submit, you will take the value and send it to your backend, right? So that might be a better way of handling that kind of form. Is there? No, so we don't have a repo, unfortunately. Sorry for that. But again, you can revisit our video on the YouTube and just try to rebuild it on your own. So yeah, again, it depends on the case. Sometimes you want to just listen for submit, take data and send it. So that will be better, easier for the client's browser and the laptop, basically, because you don't process all this data every time. Re-rendering. But in the other case, you might want to have this data here because you're doing some extra manipulation. Maybe you are listening for changes. Maybe you have some requirements for fields, so it can be not just text, but text, for example, with for passwords. You might want to listen for changes, and if the change has been made, you want to check is it match the patterns, so you can show the error message, for example, that the password should be more complicated, or any combination of situations that might be possible. So you just need to think about the use case, specific use case, and both scenarios, both ways are completely valid. Just depends on what you're doing. There is no like wrong or correct one. Okay. So I think that we did these two things. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So in our slides, because we've discussed all of that, in our slides, you can find actually basically the explanation for all of that, and some examples. So you can actually read after today. If you're working with forms, just my suggestion, and you want to build some complicated forms, when you're working with forms, I'm suggesting you, so we have two popular frameworks. First is Formic, which is a bit convoluted and not that efficient, the Formic. So, but it helps you to handle errors, etc. But the one I'm using, again, based on we got rid of Formic, and now we're using React Hook Forms. It's much better. It's super flexible. You can use custom components, etc. But it allows you to build efficient forms and with validations, custom validations, etc. And that can be super complex if you need it. So yeah, what is the event in submit? So in submit is just a regular JavaScript event. For example, if you're in JavaScript, have something like, I don't know, form.add event listener, you have submit, and you have event. So this is the event that is happening, right? That comes from JavaScript. And same event is here. So event, basically the event is happening, and this event this is a huge object with a lot of properties. I should have asked which event is captured by event variable. So submit, because it's on submit, so it submits. If it's on change, it's on change, etc. Again, this comes from just JavaScript. This is just a regular JavaScript. And there you can find the event type, you can find the event target, on which element you're clicking, and yeah, a lot of that a lot of props around it. Okay. It just so this is a callback, right? This is just a regular sorry, lost the word. Parameter to the function. So yeah. So on click means that I need to click on the button, not actually submit. I can click anywhere within the element, and that will trigger on click. I can put on click as well, but if I click on input, it will trigger the on click, etc. But on submit means that I need to submit the form. This is the actually form submission. It's just a different event, right? It's not about just clicking anywhere in the form. It's about clicking, it's about submitting the form. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Okay. That means that I think we are done for today. Thank you all again. Next week we have HTML and CSS best practices, and then we will have I will publish again by the weekend. I will publish the next 2 game development events. Yeah, the following weeks. Thank you. Do you have to? Yeah, we have Twitter. Just in case, this is our Twitter. Coders in Hoods. Yeah. So you can find on Meet. Yeah, it is in Meet, and in Eventbrite you have the events there. And any recommendations for a more in-depth lesson in Learn React.js? Well, I'm a bit out of this industry. Besides the advertising our bootcamp, I can't really give you a helpful advice. Try Free Code Camp. Yeah, Free Code Camp might have a good lesson. I don't know, to be honest, because I didn't use them for a while. So I know that I got the feedback from our students that we're teaching basically React hooks, and I know that they said that it's very hard to find React hooks lessons because this is a new thing. So try again, when you start working with React, focus on React hooks because this is the latest thing, and you will not write class components. You will write functional components with hooks. So try, Free Code Camp potentially. Yeah, React. Yeah, exactly. React hooks. 2 words. React hooks. Like that. Slack link. Yeah, of course, I can give you Slack link again. 1 more second. Sorry, it's loading. So invite people. This is the Slack link. Can we get your direct contact to reach you with questions? Yes. So direct again in our Slack. I'm always there. So you can find me, Vasil. Just tag me. You will find me that Vasil. In our Slack, and you will just tag me. I'm always there. I greatly appreciate this. Perfect. Cool. Thank you. What should I do if I want to learn React as a beginner in IT who has zero knowledge? Don't do that. So Davey, don't do that. Start with JavaScript, and this is basically this is very, very, very important. You need to focus on JavaScript first. And again, I just, as a side note, that because we run in a bootcamp, and we have whole bootcamp is about JavaScript, and the last module is React. And it's not just because it is, because the most important part is that you need to have a very strong skills in JavaScript before you start basically learning your React. There is no point for you if you want to be an actual developer. I guarantee you that if you learn React and some basic JavaScript, you potentially can find a job as a developer. But if you want to be actually a good developer and have more options with jobs, etc., and yeah, basically the better career perspectives, start from JavaScript. So yeah, JavaScript. React is a foundation, but you need to know how to read and instruct produce. Yeah, exactly. So documentation is very important. JavaScript again. JavaScript. It's. I know that this is a nightmare when you're starting as a developer, like learning programming and web development. JavaScript is the most complicated and tricky part. I absolutely understand that, and I like my main degree is corporate law. If you don't know that, and I think I spent like a year of self-teaching with JavaScript, and I saw that I'm the dumbest person in the world. Like actually the dumbest. If we would have a competition, I will win it easily. But yeah, after some time, I actually understood how the JavaScript works, how the programming actually works. And yeah, it just clicked in my mind, and since then everything is fine. So yeah, start from the actual language. Don't jump into the frameworks or any libraries. Pure language. I used 3 lessons online to get up to speed. It took about 1 month to get up on a level, understand enough to bit communication. Oh yeah, by the way, the side note on our YouTube, we actually have the recordings from some older cohorts, from last year. So you actually have all lessons that we had on last year for the whole bootcamp on our YouTube channel. So you can technically watch it and go through basically from zero to hero, the whole bootcamp, all 40 lessons. So yeah, feel free to watch it on our YouTube channel.
Sorry to interrupt like this, but can I ask something about React and GitHub, if that's okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's okay. So, well, I was just wondering. I created the. It's echoing, but anyway, I did create a React. What do I say? The folder for React.
Mm-hmm.
But say if I try to push it on GitHub, again, I don't know if it's valid to the session. It's not pushing because it's taking the root folder, because I created a folder and then I created the React folder inside it.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's making sense or not. So do you recommend taking out my React, the components or the files and folders from my React folder to the main folder? Like, does it affect the package log or package.json files as well?
So
when I'm pushing it to GitHub or anything?
Yeah, so I don't know what kind of setup you have on your GitHub, but theoretically you can just go to the React folder, initialize do git init, and plug it to your GitHub repository, and then push it.
Okay, now because the thing is, I am able to push it and I am able to run it on the local host, but again, sorry about this if it's not
No worries.
related, but if I try to deploy it on Heroku, this thing is not working over there.
Mm-hmm. So as I understand, you have basically the folder, let's say the repo, and inside this repository you have a React project folder.
Yes, this same folder actually.
So you basically can just take all the files from your React project and move it one level up. That's fine.
Can I do that in the VS Code terminal?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just manually just drag and drop to the one level up and then commit it, and you'll basically have the flat structure.
Okay.
remotely.
So that doesn't change the order of the package files.
No.
The JSON files.
No. As far as you take in all the files, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you thanks again, and yeah, see you next week, next Thursday. Thank you, guys, and yeah, have a good evening.